What's going on, everybody? That's right, I have returned, I am back, and the first thing that we're going to do while I'm back, we're not talking about movies, we are not talking about TV shows, we're not on the Sweet Film Podcast, we're talking about some video games, so I figure why not talk about my favorite game of all time. Let's talk about The Last of Us.
Do I need to remind you what is out there?
Once upon a time, I had somebody that I cared about. And in this world, that sort of shit's good for one thing. Getting you killed.
Alright, so as I already said at the top of this, we're going to be talking about The Last of Us. However, instead of doing the typical gameplay format to where I'm going to dissect every aspect from the game to the story to the gameplay and all that stuff, I figure I do my reviews of video games a little bit differently because I like games with narrative stories. I like really great story-based and character-based games. So whenever I review a video game on this channel for you guys, I'm going to be dissecting and talking about why I love the story so much. And The Last of Us, the story that this film has, it's the reason why it's my favorite video game of all time. And it's the reason, as far as a narrative story goes, with film, television show, anything, it's one of my favorite stories of all time. First of all, the story is about this gentleman named Joel who at the very beginning of the game suffers an incredibly heart-wrenching loss and he has to learn how to find his humanity. Pretty much think the story of Logan except in the zombie apocalypse. That's pretty much what you get with this game. Joel, he starts working 20 years later. The outbreak, the apocalypse has made everything just go to crap and now he's in charge of making sure that this girl Ellie goes from point A to point B. And everything that unfolds in between is just, it just proves why I think it's just one of the greatest stories ever told.
It's cargo, Joel. How do you know them?
I just want some simple gear enough to set me on my way.
I reckon it's got something to do with that girl.
It's got everything to do with that little girl.
Now that's the basic plot. Now I need to break down some of the characters for you guys because every aspect of the story, while great, it doesn't work without the characters. And every character introduced into this game is fantastic, but the relationship between Joel and Ellie, it's like the relationship between Logan and X-23. It's partially like the relationship between Lee and Clementine in The Walking Dead. And the way that they just structured these characters to really not exactly get along with each other at first, but know they've got to be together for their own survival purposes. And then by the end of the game, their character arc is just so powerful and so good and just so utterly fantastic. You just fall in love with these characters. Number one, Joel. It's not just the fact that you get to see him just be broken down and brought down to his lowest low. It's just that Joel feels like an everyday man where you just want him to be okay. He suffered so much throughout his life. You know that he definitely has some damage and some weight on his shoulders. And he's the kind of guy you just want to comfort, even though he could probably break your face with his fist if you made him unhappy.
We don't have to do this. You know that, right?
He kind of reminds me of what would happen if you took Nathan Drake and you washed him up, you burned him out, and you just made him so incredibly angry at the world. And Ellie. While you can make comparisons to Ellie and X-23 from Logan, this is exactly why I prefer Ellie over X-23. And it's because Ellie's a 14-year-old girl. She's a 14-year-old girl who knows who she is as a person. She knows what her strengths is, and she doesn't allow anybody to get in her way. Ellie is just one of those characters where she's not only strong, she speaks up for herself, and she's very real. The fact of the matter is, Ellie was born amongst the apocalypse. She was born in a world where everything has gone to crap, and she has had to learn how to survive in that situation.
After all we've been through, everything that I've done.
And the way that they created the character of Ellie, in my personal opinion, I thought it was genius. It's one of those characters where it's going to take a massive amount of dedication and work to create a character that, in my personal opinion, is better than Ellie. And I mean better. And that's just not video game, television, movie, video game, what have you. Ellie is quite personally, my favorite character I have ever seen in any kind of medium. Now, this being the apocalypse, the other element of the story is there are a couple of groups. There is the military, there's the Fireflies, and there's hunters and everybody else. And the way that they portray every single group, from hunters to gatherers, to Fireflies, to military, the way they show these characters in this world, it's very realistic. Now, there are certain characters that come along, there are certain situations where you might think it's unfair, or you might think these characters are being ridiculous over here, or that's really messed up right there. But it portrays it in such a realistic way that you can't really fault anybody for it. Because if you were put in the same kind of situation these people were, would you follow their path? Honestly, every character in the game, I can honestly see what it would be like, how I could fall into each one of these different camps. And that's the brilliant part about this. And the infection, the zombie outbreak that happens in this game, it's a very realistic outbreak. It honestly makes it feel like if the zombie apocalypse or outbreak were to happen in our world, this is how it would happen. So, guys, everything from the beginning to the end of The Last of Us, the story-wise, the way they constructed this thing together, it's one of my favorite parts of it. And guys, if you couldn't already tell, if you haven't had the chance to play The Last of Us, it's one of those things where I couldn't highly recommend it more. Alright, and I don't exactly have a rating system for video games right now. I might have one down the road, we'll see. But, guys, if you couldn't already notice, I've got a different background than where I usually have my bookshelf, and I will be explaining that later. Later this week, I am going to be having a channel update and a live stream to explain what's going on with my channel. And so, just so you guys aren't surprised, I'm going to tell you that this Wednesday, I'm going to have a book review. That's new for my channel. And for Thursday, I think I'm going to leave that one a surprise and leave that, guys, up to you to try to decide what I'm going to do. However, you guys are all fantastic, and it is what you say that matters. So, what do you think of The Last of Us? Have you played it? What do you think of the story? Do you think it's generic? Do you think it's cliche? Do you think it's one of the best stories ever made? Because I personally have heard both sides, that some say it's generic and cliche, while other people like myself think it is absolutely one of the best games ever made. But whatever your comments are, whatever your opinion is, leave it down in the comment section below. Let's get that party started. Let's get that comment section going so we can get a conversation started. And of course, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right there and subscribe and become part of the fray of nerds who love cinema. You all have a fantastic day.